Yay! That's our fake clapper because we don't have a real one, so we have a literal clap.
Yeah.
So we're here in Chicago with Kenyatta, and I'm so happy to finally meet you in person. It's so cool. So I wanted to start off by asking you, what do you think? And you can answer however you want.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the culture of Chicago. This is like my new thing of how I want to like start.
Yeah.
So I'm starting with you.
I mean, Chicago has been super loved for me. I know Chicago gets a bad rap nationally and even internationally. Like I'll have people, if I'm traveling internationally, be like, "Oh, you're from Chicago? That's the hood." And I'm just like, yeah, no. But Chicago has always been an amazing community, and then in terms of like creatives, it's like an epicenter right now. I mean, you got people like, first of all, there's actually a ton of black women game designers that are based out of Chicago. I mean, you got independent clothing designers like, you know, Leaders. You got Sarah Madden. You have Hebrew Brantley, right, who's from Chicago. So you've got all these amazing artists coming out of the city, and also musically, right? You know.
Yeah. And it's funny because Chicago, I feel like, has kind of been a point of reference, like for music and especially like rap, like hip hop for a long time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just that it gets like overlooked or forgotten, because even outside, because people always think obviously of like Chief Keef and like Drill and like Dirk and like Lil Bibby, but it's like even before that you had like Common,
the Brats from Chicago, Kanye,
Lupe Fiasco's from Chicago. It's like
Kendrick has Chicago roots.
Yeah, it's like you kind of had like waves coming out of Chicago for a long time that just kind of get, I don't know, like overshadowed by the sort of stereotypical views.
Yeah, but I feel like that's everywhere. Like even in like in the burbs, there's gun violence. There's gonna be gun violence anywhere. I mean, until you change gun laws, you're gonna always have gun violence, right? So that's like, to me, it's a moot point to discuss that. But I think it gets gun violence overshadows all of the amazing things that are actually happening in the city. All the fantastic like organizations, nonprofit and for-profit organizations that are doing shit in the city, and so it's unfortunate. We're actually one of the first cities to have a lesbian black mayor.
Oh wow!
Lori Lightfoot just got elected. So I mean, we're progressive, but and it's unfortunate that we don't get recognized. It
kind of became like the talking point of like, but what about Chicago?
Yeah, like we're just like this,
like it's the Wild West,
Sarajevo type situation, and it's really not. I mean, I've never feared for my life in the city. Like it's just, this is life, and yeah, I love it.
So you talked about games. So for anybody that doesn't know, you make games. You made this game. This is your game.
That thing right there.
That thing right there. Yeah. That's your creation. You birthed that.
I did.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about like your game? And it says here, obviously Chicago. You said the Chicago edition just came out. So.
It did. So Trading Races is something I started about 3 years ago, and I really just wanted to have a conversation, or an invitation at least, to a conversation about race. And I was struggling to have those conversations in the black community, but then also outside of the black community, because non-POCs would just be like, oh, I don't see color, right? They would just like avoid any type of conversation that had to do with anything acknowledging race. So I really wanted to create a conversation, or a space to have a conversation about race that really was intentional, thoughtful, thought-provoking, but also fostered really rich discussion.
Right.
And so that's how the game or the wheels for the game sort of turned.
Right. How do you feel that, because I know you said like non-POC, which is like white people, but how do you feel that like non-black persons of color also respond to the game? Because for me personally, like, and I've talked about this, like everybody knows, like I don't really like the term POC.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of non-black people of color have issues with anti-blackness and issues with anti-black racism, and a lot of them like skate under the radar because they're not white, right? Because they're non-white, so they kind of are like, well, I'm not white, so like I can't be racist. And it's like, no, that's not true. So like because you had like sent me a deck, and like the cards that you sent me dealt like very specifically with like blackness, not just like.
Well, there's non-whites, there's non-black people
in there too, but I felt like for the majority of the cards, are black people.
Yeah, so the mix of the base deck, if you will, went through lots of iterations, and so initially that first prototype was black as fuck, like blackity black, right? But didn't yield the like robust conversation that I wanted to be able to have. And so what was missing for me was to really unearth or dismantle the notion of race, right, and how malleable it really is. And so in order to do that, I needed to insert other races, right? I need to insert white people, and so we can have that kind of conversation. And a perfect example of that would be somebody like Rachel Dolezal.
Right, because she was on my deck. Yeah. Did we say exactly how you play the game?
No.
Okay, let's say that, because people are probably watching like, what are they talking about?
So really simple instructions, actually. So there's no set definition for blackness. Players kind of come to the table with their own definition of blackness, and then players to win each round, you want to out-black your opponent. Okay. And so there's no holds bar as to what that means. It's a communal decision. So if there's 4 players, majority would rule. Okay. So for instance, if we were playing and I put down Rachel Dolezal and you put down Omarosa. Okay. We'd have to have a conversation then about who we feel would be the blackest of those two. Okay. And that's basically how you play game.
Have you gotten any pushback from people that's like, well, it's like almost like very literal like black cards, right? Like you giving out black cards to people that aren't black. Like Rachel Dolezal ultimately isn't black. Like she's not black. Right. So it's kind of like, oh, well, you're including her in the deck, so you're kind of like furthering the notion of like, you know, black cards or, you know, cookout invitations, which I hate that. I hate that people even say that. But have you gotten like pushback?
Not necessarily about that. I think the biggest pushback that I've received is can you hear my dog? I'm sorry, because I can, and she's driving me nuts.
We probably, I mean, I'm sure it's not, it probably won't get picked up on the mics.
Yeah, just making sure. She's crying right now. The only pushback that I've actually received is that the game is racist, which is the funniest shit I've ever heard in my life. Right. Like whenever I hear it, I'm like, it's a game. Like it's literally just cards, and cards don't inhibit or contain the systematic oppression of people. You know what I mean? Like, come on now. So, and then I, get something like, well, what if it gets in the wrong hands? It's not a gun either. So it's just like,
what does that mean, in the wrong hands?
But I was just like, what does that even mean? And so I was like, what do you mean? Like, what if the Ku Klux Klan is sitting around playing? I was like, so then they'd be forced to like actually learn about black culture? Oh my God, that's the worst thing. So I was just like, I don't understand this. It was, I forget who it was an interview, and it was like the weirdest line of questioning. But it also, to me, that unearthed how scared people were to have the conversation about race, right? If this was the worst, if this game was like the worst thing that could, ever happen. But that's actually the only pushback that I've gotten. A lot of my work has actually been over the last, actually since the inception of the game, this has always been in the back of my head. And then as I developed it more, the educational component of the game has been really what my mission has been over the last like year in developing that space. So I've worked with now it's like over 100 educators all over the US and a few in Canada who use the game in educational spaces with teens and with college students. So for college level, it's been used in African American studies courses, politics, to kind of unearth unconscious bias. So I've had human resource departments use it for hiring managers as well. So those people who like need to have the conversation about race but don't want to because it's uncomfortable, but then are forced to by this game.
Yeah, like for me, it's what I liked about the game when you like had reached out to me and told me about it, and I sent you one to like unbox. What I liked about the game was, even though I kind of like see, because I've heard some people say like, oh, it's sort of like handing out like black cards or whatever, which is so funny because it's like literally a card game. Yeah. And for me, what I liked about the game was sort of like how you just said, it's kind of like deconstructing the idea of what people consider to be blackness, because it's like if I'm sitting around at a table playing this game with people and like Rachel Dolezal does come up, it's like you are gonna have like a person or a couple people at the table that's gonna be like, no, she's blacker than Omarosa because she worked for the NAACP and like she did this and she did that, and then you're gonna have people at the table that's like, no,
exactly,
she's not black.
Yeah,
she's not black. Like she's not black, and like blackness is not something you could just like put on and take off and decide, you know, like, oh, because you did this or did that, or you grew up in the hood, or you know this, that, and the third. You've struggled, you've dealt with oppression, so now you get to like boom, throw down your literal, you know, black card.
Black card, yeah.
So that was something that I did love about your game, because it did sort of, it kind of like, it's a fun game because I've like played the game. I have the game in my backpack, but it also does like sneak in this conversation about like, oh, so like that's what you think is blackness. That's what you think, and I feel like it forces
you to understand the why, because you have to talk that through with other players. Like, and you just can't say she's black. You have to go into
like, why do you think?
Exactly. So you can't just leave it on the table and walk away. And I think we often come to these like really quick, rash judgments, but we don't deconstruct why we think the thing that we think. And this gives you not only the space but also the time to like do that in a really thoughtful way.
Yeah, a lot of these conversations kind of like grow and evolve. And even part of like why I wanted to do the Black Americans was that I felt like I even saw that happening on like just like other levels, like even within like the diaspora and like within all these different types of conversations of like, no, again, like even just amongst like black people, like black means this, not that, like, or Black American means this and not that, or like I can be it and I can be it because of this, this, and this. And it is very interesting to sort of see, because it's funny, right? I kind of feel like you are raised, you're black, and you're raised to like think certain types of things about like race and about blackness and about even your blackness and like how that relates to like the blackness of other people. And then you get older and maybe you move around a little bit and you start meeting different types of people and you start meeting different types of black people and you just start like learning things, and it's like, oh, actually, like, even though we're both black, like our blackness can relate differently, you know, just because we are quote unquote like me and a non-black person of color, just because we're both non-white, we can still relate differently. Like we're not going to relate the same just because we're both non-white, and it's like we're not going to relate the same just because we're both black. Like, and I do think there are conversations that need, and people are so resistant. Like it really does scare them. Like it really does.
That's where that whole malleability of blackness comes into place. There's not. I think that we have a common shared black experience, right? And then as we come down, like depending on where we fall on the unlike, I don't want to say the scale of blackness, but like
I think of it as like a scale. I do. I think of like identity. I think of identity really as like a scale. Like when you go to the doctor and you step on the scale and they have that scale where they like move it until it gets to like wherever to be even. That's really how I think of it. It's like kind of this, kind of that.
Considering like, because I have friends who are first generation, like Nigerian or you know, whatever it may be. So we're all coming from these different or like robust backgrounds, or it can even be like my cousins from Louisiana, right? Their experience is completely different from mine, but we have this common shared black experience, and then we all are individuals underneath that. And so what this game, you know, the game or even the conversation allows us to kind of dig in and unpack that.
So how did you get, what was like the idea process sort of like, I guess, for the, like how did you were just like, you know what, I think would be a good idea, like a real life black card. Like.
The funny part about it, so it honestly just took life experiences to happen. So I still am heavily involved in education, predominantly in the tech ed space, and now more in the social justice space because of the implications of the game. But I used a lot of gamification with my students in my teaching career to like teach concepts, right? Let's make it fun. And so it literally just took time from me graduating from art school in 2007 until 16, 17, almost 10 years later, for me to have that experience of life, to be able to pair the content that I mostly predominantly focused on being a black woman in my artwork, and so to pair that with my experience with teaching to come up with a game like this.
Mm-hmm. So do you think of this as like as an art piece?
It does. Yeah, I do. And actually, like I was going through old art journals when I found a page of me kind of working through a concept around this, and like really kind of struggling to my entire advisor committee or like graduate school, like faculty were all white, and so it was really hard for them to critique my work as a Black female artist, right? So I in this kind of like notebook, you know, sketch and like little dictation, like I just was really struggling with like how to have a conversation on race. And you know, I looked at it and I was like, this like 10 years later, you know, I was like, I think I can actually do something with this now.
Yeah.
Like, I needed time and experience in life, and to put it all back together.
Did you go to art school here in Chicago?
I went to UIC.
Oh, okay. How, like, aside from the white faculty, like, how was that? Like, what was it, or terrible. Even what was that like having like all white faculty here in Chicago?
It was terrible, and I'm not gonna say that I had allies. I had allies, but not enough. And it was a graduate program, and it just was. I can honestly say that whole experience was traumatic for me. Even thinking back now, like it's fucked up. Like I was an Abraham Lincoln fellow. What the fuck, right? And so if you like think about the culmination.
You were
of, like,
an emancipation fellow.
Yes, sir. Thank you, master. I sure appreciate this degree. So it's like, you know, like thinking about the whole.
Sorry.
I should have like known, right? I should have known going in. This is bad, and but I was also like, okay. I'm in this graduate program. I'm making this particular content subject matter in my artwork, using predominantly video and performance art. And I was taking, I talk about this a lot, but I was taking an art and ethics course, and the professor was a white woman who put up images of lynchings.
Wow.
She then singled me out in the class, and mind you, I'm in a graduate cohort of like there's 14 of us. I'm the only person of color in this space, and she says, Kenyatta, how does this make you feel? And I was just like, we're not gonna do this. I'm good, thank you. And I was like, there's other people, you can talk to them about it. I'm not. And then she says, I'm just trying to take you out of your victimhood. Yeah.
Wow. So that's excuse me.
That's just the tip of the iceberg of the climate that I was dealing with. And so it was, and I'm glad that I was able to journal through much of that time. And actually at the time I had dreadlocks too. Ooh, Lord, I had my Erykah Badu moment, came shave my head, like all this stuff was happening. So I was just like, the space that I'm in is not nurturing, and I can't do the subject matter content that I want to do, that I feel called to do in this space. And I also just felt like they didn't deserve to see my work anymore.
I don't even deserve it.
Yeah. So I was just like really struggling, and literally barely graduated, because I was just like, fuck this. Like, why fuck this?
Yeah.
You know? But I had supportive friends, and even at one point, like, I don't even remember how, but like rallied like 15 of my friends to like come to this art and ethics course and like take a stand, and like,
man,
it was you
better than me, because I would have cursed that lady out.
Yeah, the provost got involved, and of course nothing happened to her, but I was taken out of the class and given a paper to, it was just really fucked up. But
so I have to ask, would you recommend that Black artists go to grad school or don't go to grad school?
I think it depends on
I mean, we could just say Black people in general, however you want to.
I don't think in 2019, I don't think it's necessary to attend college to be an artist.
Okay.
Let me start there.
Okay.
The way that social media or the internet in general has created avenues for people to share their work, it is no longer necessary, in my view, to go to art school.
Okay.
So now other disciplines, totally different. Like, yes, I want my doctorate.
Right. Like, I need you to have a medical degree,
right,
if you're going to be my surgeon. I'm sorry.
Right. So certain disciplines, of course, but I think I think of my experience more as like a cautionary tale that one, I should have done more research about that particular faculty. Like I want to own that I didn't do enough due diligence in making sure that I was coming into an inclusive and safe space. But I did what I could once I was there, right? And then I'm also going to say that, like, for those considering, you know, undergrad or graduate school, make sure that that it's worth it. There are certain degrees, like I said, being an artist is one of them, but I'm sure there's, you know, if you want to be a writer, there's another writer who's amazing, but she has no formal writing degree as well. So I think you can do, especially in the creative endeavors, I think that you don't technically, unless you want to teach, right, need a degree to do the thing that you love, that you're passionate about. Yeah.
I feel like, I agree that, like, to teach, you absolutely need it. I also feel like something that I've seen, because I write, like, I'm a writer, something that I've seen that I hate and makes me, like, very upset is this. I do feel like there's a lot of gatekeeping in the arts, because I feel like, obviously, I do think that, like, artistic talent is something you kind of either have or you don't, you know, like, creativity and inspiration, kind of like we were talking about earlier, like, you have all this energy, do you have the spark to create, or do you not have the spark to create, you know, in terms of art? But I also feel like I see a lot of gatekeeping of, well, it's definitely with degrees and with, like, school, but not even just with degrees and with school. It's like, have you, like, participated in this fellowship program? Have you participated in this residency program? Have you participated in this internship program? Have you, like, I've even seen like applications for programs, residency programs or fellowship programs that are like, oh, and, like, do you have Twitter? And, like, do you have certain types of social media? And do you have, like, a certain number of followers? Really? And here, and, like, and $50 application fees. And, like, all these things that I think ultimately make it so that the same people that have, like, historically been able to create art, right, you know, have access. And obviously when I say people, I'm talking about I'm just talking about black people, but you know that historically the same people that have access continue to have access, because it's like, if you work full-time and you can't take 2 weeks off for a writing workshop, you can't go. Or if you don't have the $50 for the application fee, you can't go. Or if you don't have the, you know, the social media standing, which it seems like in a lot of ways that's becoming, like, a lot of the new gatekeeping, like, what is your platform? This platform, you know, you can't participate. So even as I see things sort of moving away from, like, having the standard degree, I almost feel like I see, like, new gatekeeping techniques. It's evolving. Everything is always evolving, like, you know, kind of popping up in their place. And I think that there's a lot of people that are not really questioning a lot of these, like, newer techniques. And it makes me angry. Like, I have to say, it fucking pisses me the fuck off of just, like, oh, well, of course, like, you have your fucking PhD in writing, and you did this fellowship, and you did that fellowship, and this program, and that program, and then I go look at the program, and I'm like, oh, the program's $700. So it's like, people maybe don't have a degree, but they had $700 to pay for this prestigious writing program, and, like, that's the type of thing that I feel like not enough people, and I'm talking about even ones that are, like, specifically, again, geared towards, like, black writers, black artists. Oh, we're for, you know, low income, we're for minority. It's like, no, the fuck you're not. Like, you're just saying that. Like, you're still reinforcing the same old shit, and I don't think enough people are really calling it out, because I do think we've also focused a lot of our attention on, like, just, like, not being down with academia anymore, which I totally agree with, like the ivory tower of, like, academics.
Well, this actually, okay, so I was having a discussion with somebody about Spike's She's Gotta Have It, and there's a point where Nola stands up, she's doing an artist residency in, like, Martha's Vineyard. Have you seen that episode?
I don't watch it. I have a lot of issues with Spike Lee, but
I be trying to keep up. You know, I just, like, I want to be able to critique, right? Which means I have to engage with it. But she stands up to, so it's like this artist residency at Martha's Vineyard, and I think there's like 20 Black artists that get selected for this thing. Nola's one of them. She goes to this thing, and this white man who is very much so like a culture vulture has funded this experience, this residency. And so each of the residents gets like a whole week, all the supplies they need, and then also like $10,000, right? And so at one of the final dinners at this residency, Nola stands up and basically like calls him to the table, if you will. And not many of the other, like none, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong. Maybe it was like one or two clapped or said, or it was any response to what Nola was saying to this white man. So that makes me think about you saying the gatekeepers and being able to kind of like speak to power in a way. Because she did, but then she ultimately got the $10,000 taken away from her. So there's a repercussion, right, for doing so, and she needed it, right, as a struggling artist.
Right, it's tough. I mean, like, and I totally like. That's not to like shade people that do residencies or anything, because I've done fellowship programs, I've done residency programs, and it's tough because it's true. It's like on the one hand, like residency programs are great, like they can provide you with this. Especially if you write, if you're a writer, if you create art, you know, you do video content, you do all these things. Yeah, they can provide you with resources. They can provide you with the space, like the actual time and space to, you know, sit down and create and have peace and have quiet and have like actual materials, a paper, a pen, a camera, this, you know. If it's one that gives you a monetary stipend, you know, that you have money, you know, even better, you know, you have money. So like, but again, that's what I'm saying. It's sort of like, it's so... They make it tantalizing because it's like these are things that you feel like you need to create and to be an artist, but at the same time, like, yes, they put all these sort of conditions and all these sort of things on it that it's like, oh, how bad do you want it? And like for me, for example, I have like a personal policy right now that I refuse to apply for anything that has like an application fee. I won't do it. It just makes me angry because I'm just like, even if I have this like 20 or 30 or 40 or $50, like there's somebody out there that probably makes like amazing art. They might even like be a better writer than I am, a better content creator. They might do way better work than me, and they don't have it. And so it's like, do I really deserve to like have this spot just because I have the money? That's like pure.
It's an equity piece.
Yeah, like that's pure capitalism right there. Like that's all it is. Like it's not actually talent based. It's equity based. So just for like my own personal like morals, I guess, or whatever, I refuse to apply for anything that has an application, but it is an application fee. But like it is true that there is some stuff that I've like really wanted to do, but I've just been like, no, like I can't bring myself to pay for it. And again, there's other things that they just have all these fees, like a room and board fee and a tuition. It's like I have to pay you to go write. Obviously, it's maybe harder for me to write at home, but I can also write at home for free. So it's kind of, you know,
it's hella legit.
It is. It's like such a give and take, and I feel like it's so difficult for Black artists and, you know, and Black American artists especially. It's just all this like push. It's like all this push pull of like, what are you gonna do and how are you gonna create and where are you gonna get the funding, and patronage is a big thing. Like I know that like Zora Neale Hurston and Richard Wright, they had like a big falling out, partially that was over like patronage. Like, you know, one of them was like fine with being like patronized by white people, and another one was like, no, I don't feel comfortable, like I don't want white people giving me money, you know. And that became like a thing between them, and they had been like, you know, the best of friends and creatives. And it's just so unfair. I hate capitalism so much. I mean, hate it. Like I hate it.
So what I can say, because some of this has come up in the work that I do, for about a year, because I've always considered this to be an artistic piece of work. It just happens to also be a fun ass game at the same time. But it has always been about the conversation that comes out of this, and it's never been about, this is just a tool.
It's almost like a performance art piece.
Exactly, it's a tool to do it. Right? I'm really more invested and interested in the dialogue, and so when I was speaking to galleries or even like artist residencies or even Arts Foundation about the work that I wanted to do, it was really difficult for me to almost pitch. It felt like a pitch in a way, because they didn't see, I wouldn't say they didn't see the merit of the work. It was just so outside of the realm of what they had seen an art piece be, that it took about a year. And finally, you know, a few foundations and a few art organizations were like, we see it.
Yeah.
You know? But that's that gatekeeping as well, though, right? So these were organizations who were like, yeah, no, that's not, right? And so having to convince them that it is art or performance to be able to curate a conversation.
It's almost like every conversation is the piece.
It's a curation, and to be able to curate the space in a way, because all of the game nights that I am doing now are themed, right? So they're specifically talking about Blackness, but there's a subcontext of that conversation as well, and so that takes an artful skill as well to be able to do that. So, but it took a while to get there and to kind of break down those barriers of like gatekeeping of people who think this is or that is art and this is not art. Exactly.
What have some of your themes been?
Well, the most recent one was about Chicago, and then we have one coming up that's based off of James Baldwin. I Am Not Your Negro is the name of the night, and so for that one, players and participants will be able to actually create their own cards. And then define their Black. So it's just.
Can I open this?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna open it.
So yeah, it's just
I'm gonna try.
Being able to like provide the space for those intentional conversations to happen, and then really I'm always incredibly amazed by the amount of community participation, enthusiasm, and the amount of learning that happens, and that transfer of information. It's almost like oral tradition of like passing on these stories, but then it also was hella nostalgic for me, like watching my mom play dominoes and spades and shit, you know, and like somebody getting mad and slapping the card.
No.
Like that, exactly, right? And then like somebody tosses all the cards in the air because they're pissed off.
No, so you cannot stack draw fours in Uno.
Exactly.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
You renege. Like, you know, so like having that energy, but it being around, focused around Black folk is just like.
I mean, wouldn't you say that's like a part of our energy and like a part of our culture is that type of energy? I feel like
it's a preservation of all of that, but it's just focused.
And I feel like that's something that's so often gets like misunderstood, is that like when we are talking, when we're playing cards, when we're playing games, when we're having conversations, like we are aggressive, right? Like we might get loud, like but it's not even that word though, it's right, like aggressive, like we're aggressive, right? But it's just like
if we can switch that word to passionate.
Maybe passionate, like we might get loud, like we might start yelling, we might start clapping, we might start getting up in your face, like no, like that's not what it is, like no, like that's not
I told you that she
right, like that's not a book, that's not. Somebody look it up. Somebody look it up. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we fight and we arguing. It's almost like we are bonding.
That's what it is. Like it's almost like a ritual dance in a way.
Yeah, that's part of our culture.
Even at the like.
I'm struggling.
Let me see.
Please.
There's a trick to this.
I got it a little bit.
Go from the side and you just.
Oh wow.
So.
That's why she made the game.
Yeah, like even at the game night that just happened, we had people intentionally sitting with people that they didn't know. And that actually was the catalyst to like that energy and that community that was immediately built at the table through card game, through the game basically, and through the dialogue was how they connected. So
I want to read this. Chicago. The Chicago expansion pack is dedicated to all things juke, footworking, and of course a 4-piece of mild sauce. This pack includes notable Chicagoans like Rahm Emanuel, Harold Washington, and an R&B singer synonymous with urine. Piss on you? Okay. I knew that one. Wondering how Chicago matches up, pick up the Chicago expansion to find out. So again, that's like again, a party game for Black culture. That's like Chicago culture. Juke, footwork, 4-piece of mild sauce.
Gotta have 4-piece of mild sauce.
Gotta have a 4-piece of mild sauce.
Yeah.
For it to be, what else is Chicago culture? What else would you say is Chicago culture?
I mean, we are big on food apparently. So you got a hot dog, you got pizza, you got Garrett's popcorn. And then beyond that, we have our music, especially like juke, drill, right? And then, you know, Kanye was like the backpack rapper, right? That was
the soul sampling.
Exactly. So that to me is very like indigenous to Chicago. And then of course, for a while, basketball was like the thing here.
Of course, yeah. Chicago Bulls, obviously.
Exactly.
And yet Michael Jordan is not in here. I didn't see.
No.
Is it because he's not from Chicago?
No. It's because no.
It's just because no?
Yeah, yeah. Michael Jordan is likes to sue people.
Oh, okay. That's fair. So I won't read anyone that is in here in case somebody gets the bright idea to sue. But I'm looking at who's in here. I don't want you to. Please don't sue us.
Yeah.
But I see some.
Just edit all that out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We want to sage that away. No lawsuits. Yeah, no lawsuits. No lawsuits.
Yeah, he sued the shit out of a grocery store chain here in Chicago because when he used to play back in when I was a shorty, right? They inferred they had like a discount because they had just won and his number was 23 at the time. Mm-hmm. And so they had 23% off of something and then they just had the numbers.
23?
Right. And so they hinted to Jordan. This motherfucker sued and won $4 million.
Wow, from the grocery store?
I was like,
for giving 23% off?
Motherfucking petty. So
wow, that's very petty.
Steer clear.
Jordan is super about his money.
Yeah, I see that.
He's so about his paper. So
wow.
I do not.
And I see that you put the American flag. It is black and white now. Is it black and white just because of the color scheme, or was it deliberately?
Yeah, it was deliberate. So before I actually launched the game, this design was made for a line of clothing that I had called Unapologetic. Okay. And it was an inverted American flag in black and white. Okay. So
I love the black and white American flag. Yeah. I want one. I actually want one for the Black Americans for the show or whatever. And it's funny because last season, the first season, I used 2 different flags. I used just like a regular standard American flag, and I also used like a black and blue and gray sort of one. Okay. I haven't used the flag yet this season because we've been moving around a lot, but I want a black and white American flag because I also feel like historically, like black and white American flags have sort of represented us. Like, I actually just posted a picture on Instagram like not too long ago. Like, if you go look on like Stankonia by Outkast, like the background is like a black and white American flag, and it's very funny to sort of see. I don't know if you've gotten any pushback against this, but it's also
I've only gotten pushback against it from commercial companies. Okay. So when that brand was being promoted, I wanted to get a flag made. And I had companies tell me that it was a disgrace to the American flag and they wouldn't print it.
And they wouldn't print it. Wow. I've seen pushback. That's very interesting to learn. I've seen you wanted it to be like double-sided.
No, well, this was just one-sided at that point, and so it was just like with the logo, it said Unapologetic, and the flag was there, and they just wouldn't do it.
And they wouldn't do it. Wow, that's very interesting to me because like I bet you if you had wanted that exact same thing but with like the blue line.
Oh yeah, it would have been totally fine.
It would have been totally fine.
Totally fine.
Because now these like thin blue line, like Blue Lives Matter people have almost sort of like co-opted the black and white flag, which again has like historically meant Black Americans, and they just like put that blue line through it.
To the flag and it not be disrespectful. You're not supposed to wear it.
You're not supposed to do anything with it. No.
You're not supposed to do anything with it. But I've seen
people do everything with it.
Bathing suits. I've seen Daisy do.
Isn't Old Navy's brand thing a flag?
Yeah.
And they put flags all over everything. Like, that's a thing. I've gotten pushback from using the flag because people feel like I shouldn't use it because I'm black. And I should be like...
Anti-flag,
or like ashamed, or you know, like the flag is a representation of like slavery and like you shouldn't. And I'm like, well, I'm a Black American, and like the black and white one specifically has always sort of represented us, you know, Black Americans. And again, and it's funny because whenever I say that, as soon as I say like, well, go look at the cover of Stankonia, because I've also heard people be like, And like Black Americans have like never rocked with the flag like that. And I'd be like, no, that's not true. Like the very first thing I always say is like, go look at the cover of Stankonia by Outkast.
Yeah.
And it's a flag. It's a black and white American flag. Like if you go look at like old pictures of like civil rights era, Black Americans like marching, like people are marching, like holding the flag. I was like, because part of what that fight was even supposed to be about was like being recognized as American citizens, right? And I was like, so it's like, I'm an American citizen, and like, you can't tell me that
how to be a patriot.
Yeah.
How to show up as
an American citizen.
Yeah.
And it's just a very interesting thing to me, just like always.
But the American flag, I think, has become, as of late, synonymous with whiteness.
I agree.
And I think that is where
but a part of me feels like that's not fair.
It isn't when people co-opt. No, it is not fair when people take a symbol and like co-opt it. It becomes something else. But
and it's like, you can't tell me how.
Like, we can't even what's the symbol with your hand? Okay, you can't do okay anymore because now that means something else.
Some other shit. Yeah. It's like, but you can't tell me, right? It's like, you can't tell me, like. And I'm gonna get a black and white American flag, and I'm gonna use it. I don't know if I'm gonna have it before like the end of this season, but I want to get a black and white American flag, and I really want to get a Juneteenth flag also. And it's just like, but you can't tell me that like I shouldn't use it and all this other stuff, when it's just like, number one, historically, like Black Americans have in fact like utilized that flag for ourselves, and number two, a part of me just kind of feels very much like I don't have to fucking stop just because like a white person doesn't get to dictate to me what I can and cannot do with like this symbol. You know, like, no, like imagine somebody being like, again, like, you shouldn't have this on here because like Make America Great Again hats have like the flag on it. Like it's almost like, well, what does that have to do with like this? You know? And I think that there's a lot of that, a lot of sort of like conflating issues and conflating things, and also conflating a lot of sort of white America, I guess you could say, with Black America and the way that they kind of maybe do things or utilize symbols or look at maybe patriotism, you know, all these types of things. And that gets conflated with us, and then a lot of stuff just kind of gets like put onto us of like, oh, you did your, you know, again, like you did your party game for Chicago, why would you put the American flag on it? Blah, 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 blah. And it's just like,
I did ponder doing the Chicago flag for
like why not the Chicago flag?
I did ponder it, but like
ultimately you went with this one.
Wanted to be consistent for the brand, but I thought it would have been kind of, well, it would have been in black and white still, but it would have been the Chicago flag.
I'm sure it would have been cool. I mean, like, we have a DC flag, and there's like a Maryland flag, and like the Maryland flag, they will wear like head to toe, like they love that flag, like they are obsessed with that flag. And
I did look into design wise, it actually didn't look right. Because it's a very simple flag. Chicago, it's just like the 2 blue lines and then 4 red stars in the middle.
Oh, okay.
So like doing an inversion of that, it just would have looked like 3 bars because the 2 bars would have met in the middle. It just looked weird.
Ours is also, DC is also like something similar, like stars and bars, but it's like red and white, and people love it. Like they get it tattooed. I just also find it interesting when we start talking about like iconography, which I guess is like where we're going. What's sort of considered appropriate and what's considered inappropriate, because again, it's kind of like, people don't really think nothing of it when you like love your city, or when you like, you know, love your state flag.
Put on for my city.
Like your state flag or your city flag, you know, like you put on for your city, you put on for your state, and that's seen as fine in terms of iconography, but then maybe like on a
national level. And I think what happens, the separation to me from city to state to national level is that nationally we're too large of a country for there to be any type of consistency and camaraderie in that way. And so like in Chicago, right, tattoos, like flags, whatever, banners, all that good stuff, or even like Baltimore, right? So there's a commonality, right? But what happens, I feel like, when you get to that national level, my experience is so much different than somebody in Utah or in Texas, or God, in Florida. Everybody's experience is different than anybody in Florida. So because of that, it's harder than to claim, I think, especially as a black woman, to claim, right, a common thread and be like, oh, right? And it's easier to do at a local level because, you know, you'll be able to immediately relate. Because this is the question, like, for Chicagoans, oh, what high school you went to?
Yeah, it's sort of the same in DC.
Exactly. And so that's quickly, oh, my cousin went. So
like, even you just pointed, you said Baltimore. I wanted to be like, I'm not from Baltimore.
Oh, well,
I'm from DC. But I know, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's like, I get it. Yes.
So I think it's just easier to find, like, a common ground that way. And then you work from there. But
people don't feel the same politically. People don't feel the same in terms of ideology. People don't feel the same in terms of culture.
People don't see the same shit the same way.
Right. People don't see the same. People are living in totally different cities, having totally different experiences.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of feel like it's impossible. And as a system, I feel like it's a little bit out of hand because
it's kind of a lose-lose.
It's kind of a lose-lose. It's kind of a lose-lose.
I mean, if you even think about the way that the federal versus the state laws around marijuana are set up. Right? State can say, totally fine. Federal says, no way.
No.
And then there's this weird conflict between that. So to me, that goes back to what we were talking about in terms of, like, having a national or identity. If the federal government can't even listen to the states in that respect, then how is it supposed to unite an entire nation together? So, yeah, I totally agree. There's definitely some loss in faith or the ability to be able to, like, have a cohesive.
Because, like, what would a national identity even be at this point? What would a national identity be?
I mean, if Lil Nas couldn't even have a country song, you know,
he couldn't.
Where do we go from here?
He couldn't. He couldn't even have his one little hit.
He couldn't even.
He just trying to have his hit in peace and not bother anybody.
Right. And that, I mean, that is petty, but that says a lot as to how divided. I hate using that word.
I hate that word too. It's so divisive.
Yeah. But that's kind of that's become the state of normalcy, right? Like, that's normal to be in that space where it's either this or that. You want peas or you want corn. You know, like, you can't figure out how to get the medley right now. And unfortunately, the administration that we have is not even supporting being able to have
the dialogue.
Yeah, unless it's on Twitter.
I had Twitter and, like, Instagram and, like, social media, like, years ago, like, personal accounts, and I felt like the spaces were just maybe, like, very overwhelming and very
Twitter
toxic.
Super overwhelming, super.
And so I had just, like, deleted everything. And then once I got on YouTube, people were like, make a Twitter account, like, make an Instagram. So that's why I had even made accounts, because I was just like, I don't even want to come back, because, like, I was like, I'm sure it's only gotten worse, which was true.
Yeah.
And I always use this as my example. Like, Twitter is the type of place where you could be like, it's a wonderful day, and people would be like, oh, so yesterday wasn't a wonderful day?
Yeah.
So tomorrow not gonna be a wonderful day?
Yeah,
also, what
I feel attacked.
Right. Also, what about the people that can't see the daylights? So you're being ableist, talking about, the day is so nice and wonderful. They're blind, they can't see. It used to be like,
like, I can't even breathe right now.
Log off. Like,
yeah, Twitter, I mean, to me, Twitter visually, and it overstimulates me. And so my engagement with Twitter is typically through other platforms, or if I'm directly on Twitter, it's because somebody has sent a message or somebody has mentioned, you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm in and I'm out, because I feel like, yes, the spaces can be incredibly toxic, and but it can be hilarious, because Black Twitter, I'll be there for it sometimes. I'll be there for it.
I heard someone recently say, though, that they don't really like Black Twitter because they feel like, in a certain sense, the concept of a Black Twitter and participating in it is part of what makes people feel like everybody has the right to sort of participate in Black culture, and especially, like, Black American culture. They feel like, they read some tweets, and so now they know everything about what it is to be Black and to be a Black American.
But I think Twitter gives them more access, but they were gonna do it anyway.
What makes you say that?
I mean, if you're gonna be a culture vulture, you're going to find your way to do it regardless of the platform.
You're going to find the crack in the wall somewhere.
You're going to watch videos. You're going to practice. You're going to do whatever you was going to do anyway. Mm-hmm. Twitter is just another vehicle to be able to do it. So I don't want to necessarily like blame it on one particular platform. Mm-hmm. And I will also say like for any for a white person who in whatever setting may think it's okay to be like, what's up, my nigga? They're right, but there's a black person signing off on it somewhere, right? And so I'm just saying there's accountability in that, but I think it goes deeper than a social media platform.
Okay, that's fair.
Because there's somebody in their space that would be like, or should be like, right?
Should be like, no. Yeah, I think that's part of it too. I think you have a lot of people that just feel very whatever about everything, about culture, about everything. So that like you do always have those people that's just like, I don't see why it's a big deal. Now, of course, on the internet, you also have a lot of like digital blackface, which is people that's like pretending.
Yeah.
But I also do think you have a lot of people that are just like, what's the big deal? It doesn't matter.
But I think that happens more with millennials than it does with like, I consider myself a middle-aged millennial.
Which I wanted to ask you a little bit about your like podcast thing whenever we can like get there. But go ahead, you were saying millennials.
But I think that's more of a millennial thing because they grew up in a age that they're digital natives. Mm-hmm. So all of this information and access has always been readily available to them. And so because of that, they've been able to see people engage in spaces that they may have not. In my generation, it wasn't like that. It was very much so like, I went to high school.
More insular.
Exactly. And so I think because there's a bit more of a melting pot in that kind of digital way, I think that's where that line gets blurred. Mm-hmm. And they may be more accepting of something in my generation. We would be like, hell no. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's difficult because I have nieces and nephews and they don't view or see things in the way that I do because they don't. Every generation is going to experience racism differently, right? The civil rights era is different from the 80s or the crack era or the 90s and, you know, a generation of millennials now. So because they're experiencing it differently and because white people are also experiencing these times differently as well, there's a bigger separation of like, and that's where you hear comments like, well, I didn't
in my day,
you know, I'm 16. I didn't, and so that's where you don't get the awareness about white privilege or whatever it may be. So it's a slippery slope. It's tricky, and I think that it really is something of the newer generation because they haven't experienced it in the same way that I have. Or someone my old age has.
That's like, the generational gap.
Yes.
And I also do think that like the technology has like sped up the generational gap in a lot of ways.
The way that we even date, like fucking 10 years ago, like a guy could not send you.
Let's talk about that because
I be no dick pic.
I've been reading your Instagram stories, your dating trials and tribulations.
I do it for the people, you know what I'm saying?
So let's talk about that. How is dating?
It's actually good now. I met a great guy.
That's good.
That's
you
why
met him online?
I did, and that's why you don't see any crazy ass posts anymore. But yeah, like my friends would just like I would tell them or I would send them like, yo girl, look at you know, and they were like, yo, you should just do like a little IG story series.
Yeah.
I would do these like random, you know, exposés, like 30 post long joints.
Yes. I used to read all of them.
Yeah. My friend was like, I literally just turn on my notifications just to wait to make
just
sure.
Just to see it. You really had like a little series going. How do you feel like dating is for like black millennials? Black American millennials right now, I guess.
It's trash.
Oh, okay. Get right to it.
But I think that digital access in the dating world has made people unaccountable. So there's no accountability, and what I mean by that is like ghosting is now the norm, right?
Socially acceptable.
Right, and so that coupled with being able to put on like a facade, like there's people can, like we just talked about trolls, right? So it's trolling in a different way. Like somebody would say something to you that they would never say to you in person. And so that's also factored into that. And then socially, I think that women are much further along, especially like women who are entrepreneurs or than men in this generation. And so there's what I have seen is in my experience. I've seen guys who are intimidated by that, and so that also becomes a factor. And not that I've ever approached anybody with like, here's my accolades, like that type of thing, but the way in which some would speak to me as a black woman there, which became a barrier, because you're not going to speak to me any type of way.
Right. So
I think that coupled, with all of that, dating has been, fairly difficult. And people don't do it like, I'm so old, people don't do it like
Why do you think that women are like so much further along? If you think anything about it.
Well, I think like Black women are not as far along as I would hope as a communal unit would be. But I think that we are the most up and coming of the entrepreneurial set, right? Okay. I saw some study or some post that it was like 52% or something like that. Anyway, but I think it's that. Ooh, we're gonna get into it. So
let's get into it. The Black Americans, that's what we do here.
It's a tough one because I feel like Black men have not recovered from what this country has done to them. And so in many ways they are still healing financially, emotionally, spiritually. I mean, the 80s was focused on taking the Black male out of the household, right? So you have all these systematic and institutional things that happen to Black men that I think have been a hindrance in terms of progress overall. And then even as a Black culture, healing or self-care this is new, to be honest with you. Like for me, like the last decade has really been focused on that kind of work, emotional healing, spiritual healing, or just wellness in general for Black folks, because it used to just be go to church,
right?
Or go exercise, or you just hungry, you want me to fix your plate, right? You know what I'm saying? So
go to sleep when you wake up, you be fine.
You just need to put some Robitussin.
You right, yeah.
Straight. So that the conversations are changing. So my hope is that collectively, Black women and men will get to a place. But I think that Black women have been really stewarding that movement around self-care and wellness and up-leveling, especially in the last 20 years or so.
Yeah. There was definitely a concentrated effort to remove Black men from the home, and
yeah, you couldn't get financial support from the government or from the state if you had a Black man. If there was a man living in the home.
Yes, and it was again getting sort of back to these zero-sum, predicaments where it's well, okay, if your family is together and stable, you and your husband together still might not make enough money to support your family.
Yeah.
But if your Black man was removed from your household, and now all of a sudden you can get this government subsidy that is enough, right? That is enough to support the family. So it's giving an incentive. It's giving an incentive. It's literally giving an incentive to sort of
break up the family,
to break up the family union, a tangible financial incentive. And when you also factor in just other sort of social implications of mass incarceration, again getting into war on drugs and quote unquote war on crime, inequities of education, and just all these systemic things that were really engineered, designed to break up family units and remove Black men from households in just all different, not even just necessarily like father, husband position, but also like brother, son, uncle, you know, all these different types of ways. And again, like trying to sort of play catch up with that and not really, and I think a lot of us don't really understand the severity of what happened.
And I think it hasn't been addressed or I'm not going to say that, because there are pockets of organizations that are doing this work, right? So I'm not going to say it hasn't been addressed, but it hasn't been brought to the attention on a national level, and to be able to support these communities of Black men who need that up-leveling. So that's all I will say. But, you know, dating's been interesting.
Well, you're not dating anymore.
No.
So
no, I have a person.
You're out of that. I did want to talk to you a little bit about like your podcast.
Yeah.
I've never actually listened to it because like
weird.
I'm just it's like I've tried so hard getting to the podcast, and people are always like, listen to this podcast, like you would love it. And I have like a Patreon podcast thing, which is mostly just like me like yelling, which is my thing. That's what I do. But I try to listen to podcasts, and I'm like, you can't get into them. But I have heard some of like your clips and your snippets that you post, and I know that it's sort of like about being a millennial. And
so the name of the podcast is Middle-Aged Millennial, and it's focusing on. So the tagline is just like being on the cusp, and so it's just kind of the trials and tribulations of being old,
a little bit older,
right, but still really understanding millennial culture.
Not old as fuck,
but you know, in terms of like my niece would tell you I'm old as fuck. So, but just understanding that generation, but being older at the same time, and so, you know, there's only 5 episodes. I basically, which is nice. I'm able to just do it when I feel called to,
right,
about a particular topic. And I actually last weekend just recorded the episode that'll be out in a couple of days. Broken ships. People often talk about like partners that they've broken up with, but we don't talk about what happens when a really deep friendship, right, or family relationships. And so the show was focused on that, and then also kind of bringing in the millennial element of how as a millennial they will just ghost in those situations,
because that's the new socially acceptable.
And so so it's like it's always some sort of like millennial thing that we talk about within the realm of the context of the show or the theme of the show. And it gets deep, and it's really kind of cathartic and fun for me because I get to talk more in depth with like folks that I know, and it's basically I do it on a volunteer basis, and I'm very clear that this is going to be a really vulnerable and open conversation, and I'm really amazed and excited at how many of my friends or community people who just follow me on Instagram are like, I wanna talk about that. So the last one was really emotional. There was definitely tears. I do not want to listen to that. But it was good. It was really good and a sharing moment, and I've gotten some good feedback from people that they it was good for them to hear on both sides of having depression, but then people who don't have depression dealing with somebody who has depression, and hearing me say certain things about my experience opened their eyes on both sides of the coin.
I liked that it was about different ages in millennial whatever, because I kind of feel like millennials are almost like on a 3-tier system. This is like my made up system that I have. I should probably like write literature on it, but I think of millennials as being on like a 3-prong system. So you have like your older millennials, and then you have like your sort of middle tier millennials, and then you have like your younger millennials, because like on average people generally say that millennials, I'm just gonna like say generally speaking, it's like 1981 to 1989, like that sort of 18-year span, and then 2000 and up is like Gen Z, right? But it's true. It's like somebody that was born in 1981 is like 38, going to 39, approaching 40. Like Zuckerberg is like a millennial, and like Beyonce. But like the experience of like a Zuckerberg or a Beyonce that was born in 1981 is like totally not the same as that of a younger millennial that was born in like 95, 96, 97, 98, 99. Totally different, you know. By the time the iPhone came out in 2007, that kind of older tier of millennials were already like been through college, you know, all that. Meanwhile, the younger ones were still very young,
like
and then five, and then you kind of have like this middle tier that were maybe like younger teenagers, you know, kind of like navigating these worlds. And so I find that within our sort of one generation, you have this like three-prong, this like three sort of tiered system of one generation that's sort of experiencing things really different through this filter of technology. And really, I do think that like the kind of great splinter is the iPhone, the creation of the iPhone in 2007. I think the iPod was 2005, the iPhone was 2007, and Facebook was also 2005.
Yeah, and then iPad was 2010.
Yeah, so kind of in like a 2005 to 2010 in this like 5-year span of time, like a lot of things changed very rapidly.
In the way that we communicate.
In the way that we communicate, the way that we even interact with each other. You also had, in 2009 was the Great Recession.
Yep.
And so again, it's sort of like, if you were on the older end of the millennials, you might have already been out of college and already had a job, you know, maybe you weren't hit as hard as like that sort of middle tier that was like in school or just getting out of school. And then you had a younger tier that's like seeing maybe their older brothers and sisters, you know, sort of struggling. And I think that's also impacted the way that we do form relationships. I'm glad that you brought up like friendships, because I find that a lot of millennials have these like very deep friendships that are almost like family bonds, because a lot of us sort of went through these like for me personally, like my friendship tiers or my age level, whatever, got hit really hard by the Great Recession. And so, and I like had went to college like away. I was in like a totally different state. I had no family. Like my friends that I had at that time sort of like kept me alive for like a really long time. Friends that became family members. And one of those friends, we ended up like breaking up. Like our friendship like broke up. And it was like extremely difficult. That was somebody that was like a sister. Like a sister to me. Somebody that seen me through some really hard times. I'm talking about somebody that when I was like dead broke, I had no money, I was like living in her house, like sleeping on her floor. And it wasn't because of an argument, it wasn't because of nothing like that. The friendship just kind of ran, each other. It almost like it kind of ran its course and ended. But because of what we went through together, it was very hard to let go, you know?
Yeah.
And I do find that that's something I do see a lot of millennials struggling with, because you might have friendships that like you went through these like really traumatic times with, or even if not traumatic, just like these obviously these and the digital aspect of the connection too, because it's like not only, which is like sort of a new aspect of it, because it's like not only do I not have to like break up with you in real life, I have to like remove you on Facebook, remove you on Instagram, remove you on Snapchat. I have to remove you. I
can't see you.
I can't see you. I have to remove you on YouTube. I have to remove you on Tumblr. I have to block you. I have to delete your text message thread. I have to leave the group chat. Like it's like all these different levels, because it's like all these different sort of roots and tendrils that work their way into our lives because of these like digital connections in addition to these real life connections. And it's hard. It's kind of difficult to navigate. And again, it's sort of different for every different tier within the generation.
Yeah, like the younger ones, it's like peace.
It's like whatever. It's like fine.
We was never really friends.
Yeah, like we've never been really friends. So
I had one friendship break up after like 13 years, and it was actually harder than any like loving relationship breakup. Oh my god, it was really hard for me. And I remember another friend was like, come to California, get your mind off, and I was just like, no, I need to grieve this. I was just like really in my feelings about it.
Yeah.
But it's something that like I think people rarely talk about, like what happens when a family member breaks your heart, or what happens when a really dear friend breaks your heart, and how do you recover from that?
That's nice.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah.
Yay. Awesome. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think that's really good.